I feel very strongly everyone should be free and ideally comfortable to be themselves. It doesn't mean you should be forced to broadcast it. Hey, folks, I'm going to talk in the broad sense about representation of queer people in media. I haven't done a broader take on this topic in a little while. That was actually kind of how I started out tackling queer topics on this channel at all. And the thing is, there was something that happened not even that recently, last year, that I didn't really know what to think about. And I think I'm ready to talk about now, because it basically exposed a blind spot in some of my own thoughts, feelings, and positions. Not one that made me change any of my existing views, but led me to adopt a little more nuance to them, because nuance is important and nothing is ever always. So, very far away from when it happened, we're going to talk a little bit about Kit Connor. He is an actor who was appearing in the series Heartstopper, which I have not seen. And he received some criticism of a perception of queer baiting because he was perceived as being straight when he was playing a gay character. I believe the character is gay. I mean, a non-straight character. Let's just go with that. Again, sorry, I haven't seen the show. And in October of last year, on Twitter, he came out and said very flat out, "I feel forced because I've been getting harassed and accused of queer baiting. I am actually the thing I am portraying. Congratulations, you forced an 18-year-old to come out." And he was right to be angry, because he shouldn't have had to do that. And I say that as someone who has gone on record repeatedly, very strongly feeling that it is important that queer people play queer roles. Now, I am admittedly a lot stronger on that feeling when it comes to trans roles in particular, as opposed to gay or bisexual roles. The reason for that having to do with the fact that when a cisgender person plays a trans person, not only is it, shutting out trans people being able to take part in their own stories, it also reinforces a lot of the underlying false biases and bad information that people have, because no matter how good the performance is, when a cisgender person plays a trans role, somewhere in the back of their head, an audience is going to register all this as someone who is really the gender they assigned at birth, but is just pretending because that's what the actor is doing. So casting cisgender actors, especially ones whose identity is the gender that the character they're playing transitioned out of. So like having a cis man play a trans woman, or a cis woman play a trans man, then you are literally just putting up someone who is, for all intents and purposes, just going to pretend that they are not the gender they were assigned at birth. And it reinforces the idea that we fake this and we pretend and it's not real. Now, while that makes me a lot more kind of put my foot down about it when it comes to trans representation, the general principle of we should be involved in our own stories, I do feel that also holds for other queer identities, be it other gender-based identities such as non-binary, or genderqueer or anything of that nature, but also gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual. Now, given how many, well, not just sexualities, but gender identities there are, trying to get someone who is the exact thing, that can get a little finicky and a little overly nitpicky for my tastes, but at least getting part of the queer community, to me, feels important, especially now, especially these days with everything going on. I do feel it is important, even in a part like a gay cis man to get someone of that community to play that part, because, as I said, shutting queer people out of our own stories isn't empowering to us, and it doesn't help us. It ignores us. It tells us, we can tell your stories better than you can. Go sit to the side, buy a ticket when we're done doing this correctly. And when queer people get to play leads or get to play these roles, it's pretty much always in smaller, independent, not big budget things by and large, because, well, we don't have that many big name, gay, queer, etc. actors, because they're not allowed to even play what they are when it is the lead role. But that's sort of the general overall principle by which I do feel it is important to get members of the queer community to play queer parts overall. And I've talked about this repeatedly over the years, but I do have to admit, it had never occurred to me that an actor would be forced to come out in order to push back against criticism of them being a non-queer person in a queer role. That legitimately had never occurred to me. And part of that is honestly kind of an outdated mode of what it means to be closeted. And I'm not even sure that's the right word in this particular scenario, but what I mean is, in my mind, if someone was in the closet, my conception of in the closet, meaning, not ready to admit it to themselves, not ready for the world to know, and, just all bottled up and still coming to terms with things, they wouldn't take the part of a queer character. Like that's just going to confront them with something they're hiding from. What didn't occur to me is that there are some people, especially celebrities, especially young celebrities and professional actors, who just want privacy because it's none of your business. And they're right. Because that's the thing. Kit Connor wasn't claiming to be straight. What he was doing was not answering questions about his sexuality because, well, it was nobody's business. And that's something we're actually seeing again, currently, with Doctor Who and Ncuti Gatwa. I've seen it noted on multiple places by some commentators. I've even seen it in some write-ups, like news write-ups, commenting that he's the first queer person to play the Doctor. The thing is, we don't know that. And I know some people are going to give me side-eye on that and call me weird and naive because, well, you can look at how he has chosen to appear in public at things like red carpet events and go, come on. But the thing is, Ncuti Gatwa has never answered questions about his sexuality, and he shouldn't have to. We don't know if he's gay, bisexual, pansexual, non-binary. We don't know anything about those things because he hasn't answered a question about it because he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. Now, he's also not claiming to be straight. If he ever did say he was, I will admit I would be a little surprised, but he's not out as gay. He's not out as queer. He's not out as anything. Because his sexuality, if he even has it, because heck, the man could be asexual for all we know. But whatever it is, isn't our business. And that was the line that Kit Connor was trying to walk. It wasn't anybody's business. And the thing was, he wasn't hassled at casting. The problem became when there was a photograph of him holding hands with a co-star of his for an upcoming movie. The movie's called A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, and the actress is Maya Rafiko, and there was an image of them holding hands. And once that came out, he started getting harassed for queer baiting. The idea that he was trying to lean into this community or build a career off of this community that he was not a part of. He felt it necessary to come out. And it wasn't a happy experience for him. So what do we do? Because this was wrong. This should not have happened. But I do still believe very firmly that queer people should be telling queer stories, at least at this point in time. Because I'll reiterate something that I've also said before. People will go, well, that's not fair because, like, actors should be able to play anything, or would you be okay with a trans actor playing a cis character? I'm like, yeah, I would. Well, that's not fair. No, it's not. No, it's not. Newsflash, life isn't fair. The thing is, right now, there is a phrase that I'm very keen on emphasizing. All things being equal, actors, whether they are queer or straight, should be able to play whatever role they are best suited for. However, that phrase, all things being equal, matters because right now things are not equal in terms of the ease with which these actors are cast, even as themselves, much less as something that they are not, and the number of roles that are even open to them, the nature of the representation, it's not equal. And if we ever get to a point where we are on more even footing, sure, fine. But we're not there yet. And acting as if we are already on equal footing when we're not just locks in the inequities. But this still is an issue, and one that I, as I said, had not thought of. And I am not someone who is prepared to go, well, it's just an acceptable casualty. It's the cost of moving in the right direction. I don't accept that. I don't accept that for a couple reasons. First is he felt the need to come out because he was getting harassed. Now, granted, this was on Twitter, and it's difficult to know because of the nature of, well, internet anonymity, but the nature of Twitter in particular. It is difficult to know what percentage of the people harassing him were genuinely upset for the reasons they stated, how many of them actually even watched Heartstopper, and how many of them were just jumping on an issue that maybe mattered to them sincerely, but like they didn't have anything where they knew all the details. I mean, obviously they didn't know all kinds of stuff, but like how sincere these people's anger was, it's hard to know. It can get performative real quick. But I shouldn't have to say this, but I will. Harassment is wrong. It's wrong. It's why even when I talk about people who I do not like, I will point out, do not harass them. Do not threaten them. My honest thing is that you should not be engaging with these people at all. Talk about them if you must. Do not engage with them directly. Leave them alone. We'll talk about these things as they come up and it's necessary, but don't harass people, ever. It doesn't matter to whom the cruelty is directed. The cruelty itself is wrong. That is also Doctor Who. That is a Sixth Doctor quote from a Big Finish story called Holy Terror. It's amazing and is my favorite Doctor Who quote, and I will keep coming back to it. So that's the first thing. Harassment, not okay. Not okay. But setting that aside and realizing that we can't just give up trying to do something that I at least think is important to try and do, that getting queer people into queer roles, because of a handful of harassers who just need to stop. They need to stop. So what do we do? If we take it as granted, harassment is wrong, but we still need to avoid this situation in the future where people feel the need to come out, whether it is because of direct harassment or just general cultural pressure because of the kind of situation that, honestly, people like me are trying to make, where straight people don't get cast in queer roles, at least not right now. But how do we handle that? Well, with nuance and on a case-by-case basis. Because I'd say the first thing to take into account with anyone is age. I would say generally, as a rule of thumb, not an absolute rule, but as a rule of thumb, if they're under 20, maybe we shouldn't even be asking this question about what their sexuality is. Because, I mean, honestly, it's not our business no matter what their age is, but especially when they're at the age when a lot of us are either are or would have been trying to figure it out in the first dang place. No. But does that mean if they are over 20 that we go, hey, we need to know, are you queer? Person who's playing this queer role? Well, no. I'll point to Shooty Gatwa again. Granted, the Doctor isn't explicitly queer, although the Doctor is hinted in more than a few ways of being kind of queer. But despite that not being an intrinsic part of the character he's playing, like, that's still none of our business. You don't get to hassle somebody at a certain age. Just don't do it. So how do we then address that? Here's my thought going forward, and this is a position that requires a little legwork. If we're going to call somebody out, first of all, again, without harassing, it should be those who have publicly stated their straightness and cisgender identity who are taking on these roles. If someone just has never said, they've never said, it's not confirmed, you cannot find anything where they've ever claimed to be straight, leave them alone. The thing is, the number of actors who actually do that, who legitimately do not engage even at a surface level with those questions at all, there aren't that many. Now, there may be more in the future, depending on how younger generations of performers choose to handle the media, but at least at the time that I'm talking, and understand, this is never an absolute statement, nothing is ever always, but like, I'm open to amending this in the future, but at my time of talking, I would say that the number of actors who are maintaining basically no answer to their sexuality and or gender identity, they're just not addressing it, just going, no, I'm not talking about that. Leave them alone. That is an uncommon enough occurrence that I'm prepared to give the benefit of the doubt. Because my personal issue is not with someone who is super private, whose identity we don't know, playing a queer part. That's not what I'm worried about. That's not what frustrates me. What frustrates me is someone who is known to be cisgender and or straight, playing a queer role. That's what bothers me. I don't need to get worked up about somebody who we just don't know. Like, well, we don't know? Okay, then I don't have the information with which to be bothered. Don't make a leap just so that you can get angry. Get angry based off what you know. Get angry off what you can substantiate. And even when you get angry, do not harass people. When you don't know, just accept that you don't know. And until you do, you don't have a basis by which to call out that particular actor in that particular case. People can get too gung-ho about this and like try to weed out every instance, because if I'm being honest, even if Kit Connor was straight, this wouldn't bother me nearly on the scale of something like when Scarlett Johansson was cast to play a trans man. Now, again, yes, that's a trans issue versus just a gay or a lesbian issue, and I've explained why that's a bigger problem for me, but like somebody of that stature coming in and claiming a role, a lead role that could have gone to an up-and-coming queer person that just won't now, that's where my biggest frustration is. When we're dealing with young people, when we're dealing with unknown actors, especially when we're dealing with actors who we don't know, I'm not going to say there's no issue at all, but that's not where the focus needs to be. That's not where the problem is. Or at least, to my mind, not the big part of the problem. That's not even secondary. That's not even tertiary. That's way down the priority list. So, to my mind, the best way to avoid this in future is to accept when you just don't know and don't fly off the handle based off an assumption. Which, of course, won't actually work as a practical matter because, people are going to do their own thing and they don't always listen. But that is how I am going to operate moving forward. And I hope other people will consider it as a potential template. Of course, I'm open to suggestions on a better way to move forward. Because as I said, this was a blind spot for me, and I'm sure I've got others. I'm not perfect. I've got learning to do too. What do you think about all this? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living and tackle topics that I want to talk about and not worry too much about the algorithm. But even if you can't help me out there, like, share, subscribe are also a big help. And there's links to other things I do in the description that you can check out as well. There's even merch, including Pride merch and things like that. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and in particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Leotha Boyd, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, David Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. You can get your name in the credits too if you feel like hearing me possibly struggle with it for several times before getting it right.